So this will more directly apply to UC students or Cincinnati students, in fact. Uh, and one of the things that's really cool is that UC has quite a few professors that have published books. Um, I worked with Dr. Lisa Ampleman, who published a book on poetry. Unfortunately, poetry and fiction writing are two different kind of niches to work with. But she recommended me to Dr. Donald Petroy and Dr. Luke Geddes. Um, Dr. Geddes wasn't available. I, I couldn't get in contact to him, but Dr. Petroy gave me some great advice. How he and a lot of his advice was to. It's similar to what I was talking about. Stay away from hokey people like the agents and the publishers that don't want you to keep your copyright. Looking to contests to write into, indie publishers, and his own experience was that he worked through an independent publisher, and he submitted a short story to the Playboy College Fiction Contest, and their deadline is usually in February of every year. And he won, and an agent contacted him, and from there, he was able to get his book published just by submitting an entry of $5. Don't get me wrong, it is hard work, and from what I've seen everyone around do, it takes time. And I also worked with Dr. Jennifer Kelly because I was in her German fairy tales class, and it was very nice to have a mentor that was encouraging. She looked over a couple short stories of mine, and gave me constructive and positive criticism, and it helps. It really does help to have a mentor. I'd say look at Ernest Hemingway, and he had Gertrude Stein. Apparently, I think he only had Miss Stein look at his work, to mentor it. But it's always nice to have a mentor. And there are local publishing companies, the Cincinnati Review, McWood Publishing, Cincinnati Book Publishers, and then look into the local independent bookstores. Cincinnati is great because we are located at the edge of the state, right next to Indiana and right next to Kentucky. So, you have a couple of great places like, right across the river in Newport or right into Indiana. For example, there's Blue Marble Books in Fort Thomas, Joseph Beth Booksellers in the Norwood area, on Madison Road, the Bookshelf in the Madeira area, Booksellers on Fountain Square, Iris Book Cafe in the Over the Rhine area, Blue Manatee Books, fairly close to Joseph Beth, Heterotopia, a bookstore of discovery, just opened up in 2014 in East Walnut Hills, Roebling Point Books and Coffee, nice place right in Covington, right across the river, Rose Street Cafe, down the line from campus on the coast of McMillan, where they're always looking for people who want to have events. I've seen music play there. I've had seen I think a couple acts done there maybe, and I think they'd be very open to an author willing to come in and speak. And who cares? You don't have to have a following right away. Just tell a couple of friends, hey, if you guys come with me, I'll buy you coffee. Bam. Easy to get an audience. And then Barnes & Nobles and Half Price Books. I talked to a Half Price Books customer representative when I was up in Coleraine. And, I was like, hey, do you guys do local readings? And they're like, yeah, we usually have author, maybe, come in and they might want to talk, and it's fine. Barnes & Nobles, I did not talk to, but it's just, once you start developing an understanding for all this, you start developing an understanding of how a bookstore will function, what goes on the front display, what will go on the sides, and you start developing an idea of how you want to make sure your book gets the most coverage it can. So it's always good to tour around and see things. Authors that come locally. The Macmillan College of Arts and Sciences has the Visiting Writer Series, where roughly almost every month they have either a poet, a professional writer, or a published author come in and speak about their experiences, have basically a reading. For the past year, they had Michael Knight, Roger Reeves, and Claire Masood that came in and they spoke. Fortunately, I was not able to go, but I was able to get, you know, some of their advice from researching online. It's like, Michael Knight was to be patient. That's his best piece of advice. Roger Reeves, it's like you want to teach people to engage the work. Seriously think about it. And always write for yourself, even if you don't show anyone, like I was mentioning earlier. And Claire Masood was saying, your job as a writer is not to tell someone what. Your job is not to tell someone how they are, but describe. Okay, I'm gonna directly read this. It's not to tell you that horse thieves are bad people. It's to tell you what the horse thief is like. You want to describe the experience. You want to be involved in the character that you are emotionally attached to. And as we come to a close, I have a couple of researchable readings that I would recommend. Writer's Digest is a great place to look at. I found quite a few articles that helped me with developing my own query letters, synopsises, and tips and things to look out for. Query Tracker is a great resource to find agents, and I believe I mentioned it earlier. And it's very helpful because you can go by fiction. You can go by genre, if the agent is looking for an opening right now or not. Likewise, the UC English page, where they have alumni that have published books, the Visiting Writer Series on there, the Playboy Magazine contest. Something Dr. Petway told me that I've thought about and I'm thinking of doing is submitting short stories or part of my book, that can stand as a short story by itself, to these contests. They do cost a little money, but if it's $5 or $10, why the hell not? If you do get it published, you can attract attention and build a reputation, which is amazing. And one of the things I like to do when I was stressed out, over the summer during classes, is that I would go on Reddit and go on our writing prompts. And I enjoyed it because someone would write a prompt on there, like, what if Christopher Columbus had appeared, to the West, and they were very civilized, furthermore than that Europeans actually were. And I wrote a prompt to that. And it was kind of cool because I just wrote because I wanted to. I had a prompt, I created a scene, I painted it beautifully, I believe. And I did a couple other ones too. And they developed into short stories, and they inspire you. They help you create a scene. If you're facing writer's block, I definitely recommend going on there. And like I mentioned, these books will definitely help, as well as this one, if you're interested. And I come to the conclusion of my final piece of advice now. And it comes down to this. I've been researching this stuff for about almost half a year now. And let me tell you, it's no easy task. Because you're balancing all this stuff on top of schoolwork and as an engineering student co-op. And it is quite a bit of work to do. But don't let that bog you down. Because here's the first piece of advice that I want to tell you. Is that there were some things I initially thought would help me, but they didn't. But there are some things I never would have thought of, and they actually did end up helping me. And that's keeping an open mind to things. This tells you as a writer that there's so much to gain from the people and the places around you. Be willing to learn from the experiences you come across. Read. Almost every single author will tell you that in order to be a successful and good writer, you have to read. Read whatever you can. If it's a textbook, read it. If you are... I'm just trying to think about the college students that actually read a textbook. If you're on Reddit, you're reading articles on the news, You're on Reddit reading these writing prompts. Um, you're reading short stories or whatever. Whatever the case is, take the opportunity to read. I know it becomes difficult when you get busy and slam down with things, but even just a few minutes a day, it's really helpful. Listen, because everywhere around you, you're facing an opportunity for inspiration. You can absorb, you know, pieces of a story that you never would have thought of just from the people and places around you. Now, I recommend that if you're gonna put someone's story into your writing, you get their permission first. If it's directly applicable and they can realize that, and also if it's mean or you're using their name or whatever, which I don't recommend. But you can, someone's, one or two pieces of words dropped can be your one or two sentences that help create your first chapter. Um, Remember, I keep a Disney Imagineering postcard in my main folder in my backpack. Used to keep it on my desk, but I almost, I could. It always kept falling down, and I always misplace it. Just figured keep it in my main folder. It was convenient for me. But I I keep that thing with all my major homework assignments or papers or whatever, and it's to remember why and the things I'm fighting for. Um, you know, Writers have a hard time getting things out there, and you know whether it's a lack of time, you can't find the right resources, you're just down on your luck, whatever. Just remember that you enjoy writing, and there's a reason why you're doing this, and you have the opportunity to share your story. So by all means, please remember why you want to do it. Also, you're a storyteller. You know, think about like the classic Disney cartoon movies you might have watched in the '90s, like Aladdin. You start out with like a merchant peddling, and he's like, "Hey, I want to sell you something," and you start walking away. It's like, "No, come back. I want to tell you a story." It captivates your audience. It captures them. People have done this for centuries, for thousands of years. I took that away from German fairy tales, and you know, it's remarkable. You have the opportunity to craft your own story, to share it the way you want, to tell people how you feel, to create emotions, to you know break a heart yet repair it back together, to inspire, to despise, and to bring people together in imagination. And as a writer, that's one of the best feelings you can ever come across. Browse. Like I was saying, I started looking. I'm going to bookstores and stuff now with a whole different perspective. I'm noticing what goes where. Who should I talk to? What do the employees have to say about the current hot list? What books are selling like hotcakes and what books are selling like cold stones? Um, how often do they do author readings? When would they be willing to do one? How do I get in contact if I want to do one? Stuff like that. Those kind of questions will help chug some gears in your head about how you want to go about the business part of the book world. And finally, the last piece of advice I'm going to leave you with is that don't be afraid of things. It's very natural to actually be afraid. Don't get me wrong, I can be too. I am right now. Uh, but it's kind of like dating. You have to be willing to put yourself out there, to put your work out there, and let people find out how amazing it actually is. Um, it can be scary. It's a scary world out there, but it shouldn't stop you from wanting to share the story, this amazing thing you've created. People should look at it and be like, "Oh my God, can't believe I never read that or thought about that or even imagined it." It's an amazing feeling, and you want to share that. You want to give it to the world. So don't be afraid to be that amazing person you are. And this is your chance, your opportunity to share this writing with the world. So please take the first step in that path. And always remember that the journey of 1,000 miles, or in this case, publishers, as my project is conveniently titled, "The Journey of 1,000 Publishers," always begins with a single step. Thank you for listening and being a great audience. I appreciate your help, and if you have any other questions or whatever, contact me. Find me on Facebook. I like ice cream. Peace.